F1 2019 is just a matter of weeks away and marks 10 years of F1 games from Codemasters, so I reckon this is as good a time as any to take a look back at how the series has gone so far. So let's rewind back to 2009 and begin where it all started, with F1 2009. After securing the F1 license way back in 2008, the first F1 game that Codemasters produced was F1 2009. This came out for the Nintendo Wii, which wasn't exactly renowned for its racing sims back in the day, and also for the PlayStation Portable. Now, realistically, I think this game was a bit of a stopgap while they worked away on the first proper Formula 1 game that would actually come out the following year. Now, with this being a Wii game, we of course had to have motion controls, and the game even came with its own wheel peripheral to put the Wiimote into. It was kind of like the one you got with Mario Kart Wii, only less good. Now, I don't have a massive issue with motion controls in general. I mean, I used them all the time in Mario Kart Wii, they were great there, but they really don't go well with an actual racing game where you want to be precise, as you'll see from the absolute mess I'm making of lapping around Istanbul Park in Jensen Button's Brawn. Although, to be honest, I can't blame all of my driving woes here on motion controls, as I didn't actually work out what the braking button was until at least the second lap. As an F1 game, it's okay. It has the drivers, the cars, and the tracks from the F1 2009 season. It has a championship mode where you can pick one of those drivers and race the whole season with them. It has time trials, and one mode I did actually enjoy playing back in the day on this was the 2-player split screen championship mode, where you could do a 3-lap race around all of the tracks in that season and see who would get the most points. If memory serves rightly, it usually wasn't me, but it was still quite fun. The graphics are not great. I know it's for Wii, which is essentially just a GameCube in slightly nicer clothing, but still, they're nothing to write home about. Also, I don't know if it's just the mode that I was playing, but damage doesn't seem to be a thing in this game. Track limits don't seem to be a thing in this game. It just kind of feels like an arcade game where you're racing against the clock, trying to get to a time extension, and the other cars are kind of just there as part of the scenery to just get in the way. You don't have battles with the cars in this game. You kind of just either blast past them twice as fast down the straights, or you just bounce off them. It's kind of a bit weird. And that's kind of the main problem for me with F1 2009. If I wanted to play a motion controlled, arcadey handling racing game on the Wii, I'd go and play Mario Kart Wii. Not this. And as such, all in all, I would give F1 2009 a 6 out of 10. It's an okay game. For what it's trying to do, it's not the worst thing ever, but really must do better. And that is where F1 2010 comes in. F1 2010 was the first of the F1 games made by Codemasters to come out on what were then the latest consoles, the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, as well as the PC. And as such, it was a little bit of a step forward. Gone are the motion controls and the arcadiness of F1 2009, and in came something a little bit more realistic. Production values were massively improved, what with the licensed music in the intros and in the pits, the ability to float around like a weird ghost thing round your little corner of the paddock, or the ability to answer really tough probing questions in a press conference like, what's your first name? And I know I'm taking the piss out of the game a little bit here, but I do genuinely like the atmosphere of this game, and just seeing some of the menus and hearing some of the music really brought back memories of playing the game and was super nostalgic for me. So what about the game itself? Well, naturally it had all of the cars, drivers and tracks from the 2010 F1 season, including a debut for the 3 new teams, Virgin, Lotus and Hispania. I wonder how they'll get on in future seasons, as well as a debut for Korea, and the weird extra bit that they added to the Bahrain circuit, which I'm driving here. I think the official reason they gave was to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the F1 World Championship or something, and what better way to celebrate such a landmark occasion than a stupid, rubbish, twisty bit of track that made a bad track even worse. I mean, what's going to be next? Celebrating 1,000 World Championship races with a race around China? The cars handle quite nicely. I drove this on a control pad as I couldn't be bothered to work out how to get my wheel to work on a PlayStation 3, and unsurprisingly it's a million miles better than the handling in F1 2009. I think the only assists I actually raced with here were ABS, so that it could help me with that corner round the Bahrain, as well as medium traction control, and it wasn't too hard to do on a control pad, although if you so much as look at some of the curbs, you will find yourself facing the other way. As well as your usual quick races, time trials and so on, F1 2010 saw the introduction of the career mode. Typically you'd start off with one of the 3 new teams and you'd have 7 seasons to move your way up the grid and take the coveted Drivers' Championship. And F1 2010 was the only F1 game where I actually bothered to play this mode beyond the first few races or so. I actually got into Season 3, winning the title in my first season with Hispania, bit of realism for you there, and retaining my title in Season 2 with Red Bull, which, as it turned out, was actually very realistic indeed. But I do remember having lots of epic battles with Fernando Alonso in his Ferrari, and it was genuinely fun and engaging to play the career mode on this game. I do, however, think the reason I stopped playing the career mode on future F1 games was because of another thing that F1 2010 introduced. Because no matter how much fun it is to race against an AI representation of Alonso, Vettel, Button and co, it's just so much more fun to race against other people via the online multiplayer mode that first featured in this game. For me, this was also an introduction to the whole concept of league racing, as well as the idea of recording a race and uploading it to YouTube, even if it was via a camera carefully aimed at my TV. Good start. Please, good start. No shenanigans. And turn on. You can get it, of course. Oh, why do that? Why do that? Fucking bunch of idiot. Why do that? Oh, for fuck's sake. What's the fucking point? I'd also like to say that it was an introduction to me shouting and screaming at the TV when things didn't go my way, but I'm not going to pretend I haven't been doing that for years already. But to be perfectly honest, the reason I buy F1 games nowadays is to participate in league races, and that all came from F1 2010. So to me, F1 2010 will always be a special game, and coupled with the engaging career mode and the decent handling of the cars, I will give F1 2010 a 9 out of 10. It's not perfect. There are things that are not ideal about it. For example, it doesn't have a safety car. But other than that, in terms of a first sort of proper attempt at a Formula 1 game, I think Codemasters pretty much nailed it. It also definitely gets bonus points for having the best engineer in the series in the form of this Rob Smedley knockoff.
The car setup screen lets you tune the car's settings. Alternatively, you can come and see me, and I'll set up the car based on your requirements.
They need to bin Jeff off really ASAP and get this guy back. He was a real deal. Plus it introduced the finger waving man when you tried to leave the pits, which was with us for at least another 3 or 4 versions after this game.
Car to track. Move it, guys.
So after taking such a great step forward from 2009 to 2010, the question was, could Codemasters do the same thing again in F1 2011? F1 2011 came out in September 2011 for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 and PC, as well as portable versions for the Nintendo 3DS and the PlayStation Portable. This intro though is for the home version, and even though I recognise the events depicted in this intro, as they're all taken from actual races and events in the 2011 season, I have no actual recollection of ever seeing this intro before, which, given that when I replayed all of these games and watched all the intros, I recognised every single one apart from this intro. It's a bit odd. Maybe tells you something about how well I got on with this game. Big new features for 2011 were the inclusion of the Bud International Circuit for the short-lived Indian Grand Prix. The safety car made its debut, as well as red flags should everything go horribly wrong. Not that I ever remember seeing a red flag in any race that I ever participated in. And we also got 24 car online grids. This was double the amount that they had in F1 2010, which was great, although only 16 of the cars could actually be controlled by human players. The other 8 had to be AI cars, and no one ever puts AI cars into online multiplayer, so it was really only 16. Not really sure why they tried to claim 24, or even implemented that, but hey, I'm sure Codemasters had their reasons. So what was the game actually like? My memory of this game was that I didn't like it nearly as much as F1 2010, unfortunately. I'm not 100% sure why. Maybe it was because I liked 2010 so much that I had super high expectations for the game, and when it turned out to be merely decent, I was disappointed. Maybe it was that. I don't really remember doing anything in the career mode on this game. I do remember the online mode having issues where the equal cars weren't actually equal due to the way that they were modelled and the wheelbase and dimensions and stuff like that. And as a result, my favourite car of 2011, which was the Lotus Renault that I'm driving expertly here around Valencia, was unfortunately the least equal of the bunch, which was deeply upsetting. The only real recollections I have of F1 2011 are an online league race around the Nürburgring in the wet, and I was horribly off the pace. No change there then. As well as having lots of issues with putting the DRS on far too early in quali and practice, back in the days when you could use it as much as you want, rather than nowadays where you can only use it in designated areas. And I never really liked doing that, because with that and the KERS, it kind of always meant that you could never predict exactly how fast you'd be going into a corner. If you put that DRS on a fraction of a second earlier, and you got that KERS boost a little bit earlier, then you'd be getting into the corner maybe 5 miles an hour faster, and should have broke a couple of metres earlier. And as I was pretty useless as this game anyway, I didn't need other things making it more and more difficult for me. It is a bit harsh to blame the game for my inadequacies, but hey ho, I've got to blame something. Unfortunately for F1 2011, even when I replayed it all these years later, I just didn't like it as much as F1 2010. I don't have any particular nostalgia for it. I think it looks okay, although in places, such as when you're in the pits looking at the monitor, you can see that the graphics are slightly worse than the previous game, which is a bit strange. It handles okay, it sounds okay. That's kind of a problem it has. F1 2011 is okay, no more than that. It doesn't really do anything to build upon F1 2010's success, in my opinion. As such, I'm going to give F1 2011 a 6 out of 10. It might seem a bit harsh to give it the same grade as F1 2009, but I don't know. I definitely had more fun playing F1 2009 when I replayed these games for this video, and that probably says a lot. I don't really find this game particularly fun. Also, I'm bad at it. Very, very bad at it. So that's all for this video. Let me know what you thought in the comments below about the video, or indeed the games. Were you a big fan of F1 2010 like me? Maybe you loved 2009, or 2011 was your bag. Let me know below. And of course, if you did enjoy the video, then don't forget to hit that like button or consider subscribing to my channel. Always greatly appreciated. Next time, we'll look at the remaining F1 games from the PS3, Xbox 360 era, as well as a slight little curveball in the middle. But until then, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.